Okay, I'd like to call this zoning revision meeting of September 5th, 2019 to order. Please rise, we'll pledge the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Wow.
Okay, please be seated. So at this point, I'm turning the meeting over to the chairman of this committee, Dean Michael, and he'll run the show.
All righty. Is that just mine, or is that?
I made one for each of us.
Okay.
There's Nancy.
Okay.
These are comments from
All right, so I passed out
last week's
in
stuff.
front of you, and I emailed you last week, basically the minutes and the changes that were made from the last meeting. So, did anybody have any comments on any of
I
the?
didn't read it.
No,
I went through them quickly. They look like they all been picked up.
Yeah, okay.
I didn't see any omissions.
So I know that Russ had a comment. Russ? I know you had a comment on one of the changes as to, you didn't like the way we just added on the end of
Russ
the
Tompkins,
sentence.
Showsville. This, I apologize, it's probably nitpicking, but the point we brought up about 250-55 historic landmarks, and I said it shouldn't be done without the consent of the landowner. And I see on the revision on the computer, you put down after recommendations or boundaries and a written petition signed by the owner. So I guess you
We have
meant that to be that it couldn't be done.
This is, my wife and I are going to work on this. Because we talked about it last week at the last meeting.
To revise it?
Yeah, but she was out of town, so we didn't get to do it. So
Well, I'm in favor of the intent here. I just,
Don't even-
I wondered if written petition, or rather should say, it cannot be done without the permission of
Sure.
the owner of the property.
Written
Yeah.
permission.
Yeah.
what the board asked us to do, and what we're going to do, I hope in time for at least for the next meeting, is split this out into two, of like A and B. One dealing with individual properties, and the other one dealing with historic districts. That was the request, that I think Ray made that request, right?
But if
So,
you,
we'll incorporate what you're suggesting, and we'll be reviewing it anyway, so if we miss it, I'm sure you'll.
You'll hear it
notice.
again.
Yeah.
my concern is if you make a whole
Yeah.
district historic, you have encompassed every structure in that
Oh,
district,
yes.
which is going against the rights of the property owner. You know?
It's an involved process.
All right, well, that was
Anyway, so you can table that, because this is
back.
subject to revision.
I didn't realize that you were going to be going over that. I thought we had basically settled that, and this was a revision that would,
No, actually, I think the version here is the same as what exists now, as I read. I don't think.
yes.
Oh, we
But
made some
after
changes, but,
We discussed
and
this
we
in the
added, I
meeting.
added in that
Oh, did
last
you?
sentence
Okay.
that was suggested,
Oh, I
so,
don't remember, okay, I didn't notice the changes.
We discussed this at the last meeting we had, and I thought that was sufficient. I don't know why we got to have you and your wife or who else ever turn around and deal with it again. I think
Because we're
that,
going to make it even better than it is.
in your viewpoint, maybe.
yeah, the only thing that was added is in B at the end of the sentence.
What was added?
And a written petition signed by the owner.
And a written position.
Oh, that
Petition
wasn't in
signed
the,
by the owner.
that wasn't-
No, that
okay,
wasn't the
oh.
original.
okay, all right, well, I guess I missed that one. Okay,
That was the only change. There was some
Sit in
comments, but
front. Yeah, you could sit up
Well,
front is all I
the
meant.
reason for splitting them out was because there was some confusion in terms of talking about two different things and
Yeah.
getting them
Right.
conflated.
And there's really different process for
So
each
that's why
one.
I made the mistake of volunteering.
It had to be separated into two processes, essentially.
So Russ, did you have any other comments on the, any of the past stuff?
Not past stuff, but other stuff that you don't have listed.
All right, well, the next one is 25058, which is hotels, motels, and inns.
Yeah.
Okay, before that, I have comments on 250,
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you,
But we're
before
not,
you get there, Russell, you want to read these comments, about 56, the home occupations?
Oh,
What do you want to do with those?
go ahead.
Okay, these came from Deborah Lapointe, who lives on Center Road, who had said she would be here, but is not. So I'll just read you what she said about 250-56 home occupations. Letter C states, home occupation use shall be conducted in a manner which does not give the outward appearance of a business, does not infringe on the right of the neighboring residents to enjoy the peaceful occupancy of their dwellings, and does not alter the character of the neighborhood. I have an issue with my neighbor. I've been told that this neighbor has a contracting business. Also, that he will be putting some kind of storage building up to store his materials and equipment. If the building will be storing things for personal use, then I have no problem with that. However, if he's planning on storing materials for business use, that will create the need for a daily pickup and drop-off, trucks to load and unload, which will create an outward appearance of a business being operated in a residential neighborhood. It's not a normal activity that occurs on residential property and will alter the character of the neighborhood. Do not want to be living next to a construction site, noise, trucks, and so on. Home is in a highly visible location with no way to hide or shield this activity. Building cannot and should not be permitted to operate as active storage for business. In the same document, it allows for delivery and pickup material 10 times per week. Ask that this be eliminated or amended to no more than 5 times a week. I think it's 3 actually right now. We increased it to 10. I asked that this 5 times a week, and the word materials be eliminated or amended to small packages. By allowing such broad language, materials could be something very large, especially in regard to contractors, would require flatbed trucks and payloaders. Once again, create lots of noise, activity, not residential in nature, would definitely alter the peaceful occupancy of and essential character of the neighborhood. These 2 requirements cannot be in the same document. One requires that a home occupation not be allowed to alter or change, whereas the character of dwellings in neighborhood allowing deliveries of any kind and size 10 times a week will not allow the first requirement to take place. Okay, so she says there's a contradiction there. We should always strive to keep anything commercial out of a residential area to maintain the integrity of the community and help homeowners maintain the value of their property. Okay. So that was a comment we received on section 250-56, which I think was one that we talked about last week, right?
Yeah, that's one of the changed documents that
Right, so I
was
don't know.
presented tonight with all the changes that we made,
Well, there's-
which were quite a few, and you mentioned the one which would, from the 3 days to 10.
Yeah, that we had, I remember we had agreed to that. I mean, a lot of the issues that this person is raising are, I guess, which sort of fall into the category of being qualitative issues. They're not ones that you can necessarily measure. Those are the hardest kinds of issues to enforce because they're so subjective. And there's a lot in here too, so I don't know if you want to table these comments and look at them at more leisurely fashion, or
Well, I didn't see them, and she was here, and she made her pretty much
I think she
the similar
spoke.
comments
Yeah, I think she spoke.
that night.
Yeah.
So I don't see, unless we want to change the number of deliveries, which was, I think, a debated item as it was. I don't see anything changing from the last document. So, I mean, I don't know if she had a chance of looking at the
I don't know.
revised.
I don't know that.
Yeah.
I don't know that. I don't know.
Then you get into
I don't know
the
that.
contractor's storage area,
Right.
which is a different section
Right.
entirely, so you gotta watch that they're not stupid conflicts between the 2 of them. They should be reasonable, if there be differences,
right,
but
right.
they should be reasonable.
I think, and presumably she's not only speaking for herself, and I would imagine other people in
I
town.
mean, she made a comment
feel the
that,
same way, but-
from last meeting's notes,
Yeah.
because I wrote them down, that she doesn't think that this should affect the small contractors. She was more concerned with the big contractor, especially ones with big equipment. Well, if you're storing big equipment that is part of that contractor's storage yard, you know,
Yeah.
then it would be a totally different. So I think she's kind of lumping her main concern into one concern, and I think it's really addressed in a different section.
Well, yeah, it's, you know, it's extremely difficult to tell somebody, I mean, this particular issue, or any issue, a similar issue, you know, somebody who's lived on a property for whatever, X number of years, and so, and all of a sudden,
Something changes.
exactly. And not necessarily what you think is for the better. So, you know, so now you've got a situation where somebody says, you know, I can't enjoy my property because there's all kinds of noise and commotion, and I go out there on a Sunday afternoon to sit in the yard, and I don't know, whatever is going on, and I have to look at backhoes or other kinds of things, and I don't want to be unfair to that person, but by the same token, you're being, I mean, the law, sort of in a vague sense, is being unfair to me that I have to, you know, I have to deal with this, and I shouldn't have to. I mean, that's her position. And again, I don't imagine she's speaking only for herself. I'm sure there's a lot of other people.
Well, sure, I mean, we already
So what
have
do you tell
a
them?
no
What's the-
contractor's
What do
yard,
you tell them?
you know, law.
Or define what a contractor's yard would be if they
So when we get to that section, we can certainly,
consider it.
you know, talk about those items. But nobody wants large equipment parked next to their house and having to deal with the noise and everything else.
But you can't modify the trucks because they gotta have beepers on them.
Yeah, well, that's a safety issue.
No, I'm just saying, so it's not something that's
You
easily,
have to have.
the beepers when you
for the
back up.
Back up.
Yep.
But
And
you
they
even have
gotta be-
Well, I
beepers on the UPS truck, so you could be getting normal deliveries to your house and,
True. I mean, you know, the ideal situation, or what this particular person, and again, I'm sure others would think is ideal situation, is that their stuff should be stored off-site. That's what they would prefer. I mean, I'm sure that would be the preferred solution.
right.
And many times
In
that
some
does
sort of,
occur.
in some sort of an industrial area where
Yeah.
people in their houses and so on are not
Yeah,
affected by the
that's not
noise and the
practical.
dirt and the commotion and the traffic and that sort of thing. So it's, I mean, it's a really tough issue to draw the line.
Well, you know, what I would say to anybody is, so what would be changed in 250-56? I mean, because it doesn't anywhere in here say that you could store outwardly or openly anything, really.
No, there's a separate, where is it? There is actually 250-64, which I don't think we've gotten to yet.
We haven't got to that, right?
All right, we're on the verge of getting to 250-64, which actually talks about the issue of storage. Outdoor storage or something, and if I can find it. Yeah, outdoor storage or parking of recreational or commercial vehicles. That's 250-64, which is obviously it is related.
Yeah, so
Anyway.
that sounds like the better place to address this.
Well, okay, we'll see when we get to 64, yeah. It's pretty loose, yeah, 250-64. Doesn't have a lot of teeth in there, but okay. Let's table that for now. Okay. By the way, this is just a technicality, the motor vehicle thing should actually be 61.2, because we already have landscaping is 1, no, lighting is 61.1. So actually, motor vehicle should be 250.
Why was it B first?
Yeah, so, exactly, so it should be 61.2.
Okay.
Now that we've succeeded in confusing everybody.
Yes.
So landscaping would be 61, lighting would be 61.1, motor vehicle would be 61.2. Anyway. Just for the
Oh,
record.
yes, it was B.
See, yeah, yeah, exactly.
agenda.
Okay, so
Yep.
250-58?
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
For all you who aren't familiar with me, Russ Tompkins again, Shelbyville.
Still?
250-58, yeah, I haven't left, Elliot, much to your chagrin. You know, I'm sure that someday it might happen above or below ground. 250-58 is hotels, motels, and inns. And I looked at this thing and I said to myself, why do we even have this section? Why would we want a hotel, motel, or inn? And especially since they're only allowed by the schedule of use in the hamlets. Why would you want a motel in Shellsville or a hotel in Shellsville? If you're talking about quality of life, I don't think this fits at all. So, and looking through the schedule of use table today, I was amazed at how many things are only allowed in the hamlet. Anything to do with motor vehicle sales and accessories. And I don't understand why you're packing everything in the hamlets. They're pretty tight already.
The Hamlet's, well, the intention was, as I understand it from whenever this was done, is that Hamlet was supposed to be the commercial centers, and that's why you see these things allowed in hamlets,
Yeah,
and
well-
not allowed outside of hamlets.
As somebody who lives in the hamlet, I wouldn't like to see it, but I really don't think, I mean, we had one motel in the town of Clinton, it was over by the Parkway.
Yep.
It served a great purpose because the people coming to the Parkway were right there. It was away from everything else, it was at the end of a road, there was
Hollow
nothing
road.
near it. A location like that, maybe, but to have these hotel, motels, and inns in the hamlet, I think is definitely not needed
Well-
and not desired. So that's my comment on that section 250-58.
Well, following up on that discussion, if you look at the hamlets and the parcel sizes and the structure of the parcels and all, essentially, you can't build, okay? You might as well remind yourself, you can't build in it, just like you said, forgetting about the noise and everything else. From a ground area and parking standpoint, there is no space to build. So why are you encouraging something that when they come to the planning board, they can't get approved? Everybody gets mad at us saying, oh, well, you know, we gotta have this days in or whatever it is, and it can't be built because there's no space.
Ian had a very good suggestion,
Who's, oh, okay.
building from what you said.
Yeah, so two comments. One, I support Russ, very unusual circumstance, but I agree with him. I think the
Drum roll.
town,
Protocol, you should
sorry,
announce-
Ian Schrank,
announce-
Fiddler's
Thank
Bridge.
you.
I think this town, we don't want to be Hyde Park, we don't want to be Rhinebeck. People can stay in Hyde Park and Rhinebeck and be very close. I'd be really happy just to say, no hotels and motels in the town. If we decide we do want to allow them under certain circumstances, I would highly recommend we not try to draft it until we finish event centers. There's like 80% overlap between hotels, motel issues and event center issues. They both have activity, they have noise, they have people coming and going, they have people staying, and spending the night there. So I don't see how you could even deal with it until we finish event centers, but I'm with Russ, I would be happy to
Well,
just
of
stop
course,
it.
you know, when this was written, the conference centers, you weren't allowed to have overnight guests. But now, the event centers is different, so you may not even need this anymore, right, is what you're
Right.
saying?
Well, I kind of question what's going on at the beginning of Hollow Road in 9G there. I think they're calling it a bed and breakfast, but I would almost say that it's kind of leaning towards
You mean-
going to an inn.
It's not the motel,
Hollow Road and.
the old motel.
No, 9G side,
Oh, 9G site,
the other side.
okay.
Hollow and Route 9G.
Oh, you mean the old house there that's being renovated?
Yeah,
Oh,
at Frost Mills,
yeah, the
DeWitt
DeWitt
House,
House.
yeah.
Okay.
DeWitt House, Frost Mills.
Yeah, okay, they're calling that a B and B,
They're calling it a B&B,
right.
Yeah.
but it doesn't sound like they're going to be active owners living in the property.
That's their plan.
Yeah?
Their plan is that, right, they're gonna live upstairs, so they have a little suite?
You got to come speak
You
at the
gotta
mic.
come up here in the mic here.
I appreciate the conversation, but the people at home can't hear us. I mentioned your name.
My name is Lou Fiorisi. I'm the zoning administrator in the building, temporary zoning administrator in the building official. And I can tell you that 18 Hollow Road is functioning as a bed and breakfast store. That's intent. They will get a certificate of occupancy for themselves as a residential lodging house, bed and breakfast, and there are rules and regulations associated with that. The minute they no longer occupy, then it no longer has its approval. But with regard to, I took a time to look at your master plan, which talks about like developing the centers as more for tourism and maintaining the quaint country qualities of the town of Clinton. And, you know, it may be that's why you have this inns and hotel with the intent of scaling it to a small hamlet scale. Someone who might take one of the bigger houses and make a hotel out of it, like 18 Hollow Road perhaps. But that 18 Hollow Road approached it for as a bed and breakfast, probably not knowing that we had a hotel inn or, opportunity there. So if you take it out, you might be needing to put it back in at some point in time.
They wouldn't have the land there anyway.
Well, again,
Where?
it's the idea is to get the,
The bed and breakfast, I don't think they have the land to qualify for.
Sure they do. They own 4 lots on all 4 corners.
Well, they don't own Mark's house
No.
because that's what Jason Mark is on one corner.
They own on all 4 corners of Route 9G.
Oh,
Oh, the other
It's
side.
like 9 acres.
But there is no minimum acreage requirement for a B&B. There is for a hotel.
Yeah.
There's a 3 acre minimum for the first 16 guest rooms. I don't think a B&B has a minimum acreage requirement. Yeah, okay, you need 3 acres, right. Which in a hamlet is hard to get.
That's right.
So if somebody had a big old house and wanted to turn it into a hotel, they couldn't do it without 3, they'd have to get a variance.
Right.
Fred Marshall,
Does he have 3 acres?
Oh, yeah,
Oh,
he's got
yeah.
all that land to the
Yeah, he's
back.
got
Okay.
everything in the back.
Okay, so he could do it, yeah, so he could do it.
So there are instances where it could happen if someone wanted to.
still against it.
But I think the point was made, this may be more appropriately addressed when we're dealing
Well,
with
yeah, I mean,
the issues of, conference centers, et cetera. Otherwise, I think Russ' point, otherwise we'd take it out altogether, but it may not be appropriate at this point.
I'm trying again, there's no reason to delay it if the sentiment is to just kill it,
Yeah.
right? And this wouldn't necessarily, as I understand it, would not necessarily kill B and Bs.
No.
Right, that's separate.
Right.
But
That's a
we're talking about bigger, where
Right.
someone doesn't live there. And if the sentiment is to stop it, I'm all in favor of
but
that
it would,
first choice.
it would eliminate hotels and hamlets
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
if you take it
Yeah,
out.
or eliminate in the town.
In the town.
Well, effectively, yeah,
All over.
okay. That seems like a pretty drastic step. No?
Let's hear another comment.
Gregory Stanford, Lake Drive. I'd like to speak in favor of keeping it in there because
Okay.
I have a weekend house here. My house on Hollow Road was pretty small. I built a bigger one here, but still I come from a large Irish family. And in the wintertime when they come to visit, I usually have to put them up in Rhinebeck or even in Kingston. And, you know, with the deer and all that stuff, you know, it's pretty hazardous. So I just think that if somebody does want to take one of their homes in this region and turn it into a nice little hotel, which is definitely a trend, I don't see why you should take it off the books right now. Thank you.
Well, I mean,
It's very limiting.
there's-
It's only-
there's a difference between, obviously, hotels, motels, bed and breakfasts, and something that's coming up, which would be the short-term rentals, that could solve some of the issue that you're mentioning as far as the availability of someplace for someone to stay local. So whether we keep it or we don't keep it doesn't necessarily mean that would totally take everything off the table for available local housing for, you know, short-term purpose.
Actually, the short-term rentals are, in that sense, are better because they can be located anywhere, whereas these are
Yeah,
restricted.
and they're more flexible.
Right. I mean, these have to be in a hamlet or else they don't exist, which is very limiting.
And as I say, structurally, there's not the land generally to
Right.
allow it. So I'm in favor of taking it out, make no bones.
And addressing it through other venues.
Yeah,
Yeah.
short-term rentals or whatever.
Right.
There are other vehicles to supplement it.
Right. Okay. You wanna talk-
Elliot?
Elliot, you want to take it out? and-
In or out?
I would rather leave it until we deal with the other one.
Temporary out?
I would say temporarily in,
Oh, in, okay.
until we have the short-term rentals thing nailed down, because that's gonna be difficult to do. I don't see any harm in keeping it right now.
So it's just in hold
Yeah,
position?
basically. I mean, if it turns out not to be necessary, we can always,
Because I have a lot of questions relevant to the
We can vote to
numbers of
take it out
things
later.
that are in here that I think preclude really the feasibility of it.
what are your questions?
Well, first of all, minimum area size is 3 acres for the
Right.
first 16 guest
Right.
rooms. Any additional rooms, okay, is 6,000 square feet. That's essentially an acre and a half for every extra room over 16, which,
No, if it's 40,000.
40, oh, my mistake, yeah. I thought 40. Yeah, okay. Yeah.
It's good
But
thought, but
still
yeah, it's-
represents
yeah.
lots of land.
For a hamlet, it's a large lot.
Yeah.
I agree.
Have that
Yes.
land.
So, I mean, that just runs it way out of place.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
That's just one
that problem can be easily solved by reducing the number of
square feet.
acres.
Wasn't there also, I know it was a restaurant, but wasn't it an inn at one point in time right there on Hibernia and Taconic?
Yes.
Yes, that was a restaurant.
Yeah.
I know it was a restaurant, but was that an inn at one
No,
point?
not
No,
that
It was
I
always
know
a
of.
restaurant?
I think it was just a restaurant.
Just a
with
It's a
Had a bar
restaurant.
upstairs.
Yeah, That's
Yeah.
all. It was just a restaurant.
Yeah, something.
Dinner space downstairs and a bar and
Yeah,
dinner
yeah.
upstairs.
Right.
Yeah.
But that's all been reconverted,
Oh, yeah, it's a residential house now.
yeah.
All right, so is there any changes that you want to make here, Ray?
Well, oh, yeah, I mean, I just hit that because that's the first one. And then the next one is on C, says occupancy of patrons shall not exceed 4 weeks in any given 6-month period. First of all, how do you enforce that is the first issue. The second issue, what if there's an emergency and people need housing? Red Cross goes over and says, hey, can we put them there? How long can they be there? They could be a long time before their house gets built, whether it's a fire, a flood, or something else. It's close to the area here, and their friends and family are here and all. So, that's a difficult thing to
I think
handle.
the intent was that it wasn't going to be like the hotel in Pleasant Valley, which
Right.
has now gotten a bad reputation of being a long-term welfare motel that's now attracted several criminal elements as well.
Why not use whatever we use for the short-term rentals? I mean, there's some kind of limit for short-term rentals, right? How long they can be occupied?
Yeah,
Well, the definition of short-term rental was nothing to exceed 30, up to 30 days would be defined
month.
as a short-term rental.
Well,
that's in one time.
that's
not-
basically what this is. This is 4
Except this
weeks.
says in any 6-month period. Page
It's C,
C. 250, 58.
C.
C.
Again, Ian Trank again, it's obviously up to you guys, but we are so far along on short-term rentals and conference centers, and there's so much related to these
I
issues.
agree with that.
I would put this off. If you guys don't want to vote on this now, that's your right, but I would just totally put this off until we finish those and then integrate this into that. And I think we'll find it's a lot easier at that point.
Okay, we'll hold to later.
Sure, we can do that if you want.
Unfortunately, the short-term rental thing is out of
This sequence,
sequence, so
it'll be when it is.
we're gonna have to deal with it in two different venues.
We're not gonna get done with that before, I mean, after this. We still got a lot more time to go on this thing.
So, we'll table it?
Kennel, yes. Kennels.
No, kennels is not been marked unless someone has, oh yeah, I forgot.
You're not gonna let, I'm not gonna let you skip by 250 to 59 kennels.
Okay.
Even though it's all black, and I sent you all emails referring to this, it has changed drastically when you look at the definition. The definition changes the whole prospect of what a kennel is. And I have the old and the new definitions. The old definition makes it perfect sense to me. Any premise on which are kept 4 or more dogs for more than 6 months of age for the purpose of boarding, care, breeding. Obviously, commercial use, that's what I think of as a kennel. Your new definition says, any premises on which are kept 4 or more domestic animals, dogs and cats, I don't know where the cats come from, but of more than 6 months of age, which are, this is a very important word, housed, groomed, bred, board, trained, or sold. Housed means my pets. It's not like some commercial venture. And you remove the section that says for the purpose of boarding, care, or breeding. So in my particular instance here, pardon me when I get to the page.
You're looking under definitions?
Yes.
Okay.
Definitions
Just want
are
to be sure what
entirely-
we're looking at.
I don't know what definition you got, but the old definition,
Yeah, we changed it.
The old definition
not
is
much.
great,
No, but we changed it.
but it's been changed.
Yeah, look at the new one,
The
Dean.
new definition.
I know that the new one, it just
Yeah.
added in language,
Yeah.
it didn't take out anything.
Yes, it did. It took out for the purpose of boarding, care, or
How-
breeding.
How is it different? You said they're different. How are they different?
You put in housed.
So,
I house my animals. I have 4 cats and 2 dogs. By your new definition, I am a kennel. By the definition, I have to have a kennel license. I live in a hamlet. They are not allowed in the hamlet by the schedule of use regulations. In the places they are allowed, they require 10 acres. So you've taken what I consider the definition of kennel, which is a commercial kennel, which is what I think of as a kennel, and you've, by putting in housed and removing this section that you had in it originally, you had it crossed out for the purpose of boarding, care, or breeding, you've eliminated just the commercial activity and put it to every single homeowner. And, I mean, it's changed 180 degrees. And like I say, I have 4 cats, I have 2 dogs. I would be a kennel, which is illegal. So by your definition, I would be guilty of a misdemeanor, subject to potentially 6 months in jail. I mean, you're criminalizing behavior of an average homeowner.
So your idea would just be add that back in?
or just
I
keep,
would cross out housed, or you could leave out, you could leave in housed, but if you put in for the purpose of boarding, care, or breeding,
Oh,
this makes it a commercial activity.
Yeah, boarding and housed are very similar.
I know.
I mean, in meaning, so if you
when
took
put
out
in
housed, then boarded implies financial arrangement.
what if we just reinstate the existing definition?
I would be,
And take out all the rest?
Well, you can keep the cats in, but take out the rest, yeah.
No, you don't want the cats in.
Why don't we want cats in?
First of all, we don't inventory cats, we don't count cats. There is
cats don't
no,
have to be licensed.
They're no
by New York
license.
State, you know?
so how do you count cats?
I think the original definition,
Count the legs and divide by 4.
Yeah, I know.
You can herd
the
cats.
original definition where it kept 4 or more dogs for the purpose of boarding, care, or breeding. I'm not boarding my dogs. Yeah, I suppose you could say I'm caring them for them, but
I hope you are.
I just think the original definition denotes commercial activity. You're having a kennel, you know?
That-
And the second definition where you put are housed and then you crossed out, the definition was gonna have for the purpose of boarding, care, or breeding, you
Which
crossed
is
it out of the
commercial.
line.
That's commercial.
That made it back to affecting every single homeowner.
Yeah.
And I think that's a drastic overreach. I suggest removing cats, housed, and putting back the deleted words for the purpose of boarding, care, or breeding.
How about just keeping the old definition?
We're just keeping
Yeah,
all
that's what I
one.
was gonna say.
The easiest thing is probably just
Which,
keep,
which is the black.
yeah,
Right.
yeah, keep the, yeah, and get
Well,
rid
I
of,
go along with the old definition.
Okay, so we'll just keep the old definition.
Okay.
Now you'll hear another side.
Rich Morse from Hollow Road.
Oh, you're a cat man?
You know, what Russ said is right, except that there's no difference in annoyance whether a barking dogs are somebody's private pets or a commercial enterprise. And you need to take that into consideration. I don't know how cats got in there, I agree with Russ. But I would not. I think having a limit on the number of dogs on a property is kind of important.
well, there is a,
Oh, yeah,
there is a
4.
limit.
If it's 4 and you stick to that, whether it's commercial or otherwise,
4.
that's fine.
4, yeah.
Yeah.
If you go by the old definition, you have 4.
Yeah, there is, yeah, there is a limit.
Yeah.
Okay,
I'm trying, just a procedural question. I didn't read 59. It wasn't on the website.
Well, actually,
In the future, when the number is skipped, does that mean the proposal is no change? So I didn't know that. Okay. I'll know
Actually,
for next time.
a correction to what Richard just said. It's a minimum of 4, maximum is 12. If you read
Under
Counts.
59.
under 250-59F, a maximum of 12 dogs over 6 months of age. So that's your maximum. 4 is your minimum. You can have up to 4 without being a
Well,
kennel.
that's,
Yeah.
But over 4, you're a kennel.
Yes.
But you're not limited to 4.
No.
Okay.
And just to let you folks know that maybe watching at home, there is a section of law which covers barking dogs. I had the unfortunate experience when I was serving as town justice here to deal with one of those issues, brought by one neighbor against another neighbor for habitual barking dog.
Right.
And I had to find the dog guilty.
Did you put him in jail?
No, I took him home with Willowbrook. A willow man. There was a fine involved.
all right, so that being said, we'll keep the definition and there's no changes to 59.
right.
Yes. Did you have anything for 60, Russ? Landfills? Dumps?
No.
All right, so let's go to
We're done with
61.
that.
250-61 is landscaping.
Okay. I come back on C again, where it says native plantings. And remember, we took it out of other things and
What did we
said.
say, non-invasive or something? Is that what we said?
No, we don't plant, none of it, no. We do not plant
Yeah, right, right,
invasive plants, yeah.
I think that's what we did last time.
Yeah, we did that in
Right.
other places. I'm just pointing it out. We got that same problem here.
Invasive or native?
No, not native.
We want to say non-invasive plantings.
Non-invasive plants.
Instead of native, change native to non-invasive. That's what we did.
We did that in
Yeah.
the solar law and everything else. Then you gotta watch the word native plantings here. So it's, you gotta resentence it a little bit to clean it up, but that's what, the key word there to jump that thing through.
So that whole section basically comes out,
Yeah,
because it defines native planting.
right. I understand.
So we don't need that.
So one would come out.
Yeah, well, except for the, you could just say, non-invasive planting shall be used unless otherwise approved by the planning board, period.
That's good. That's another way
And then the rest of
solving
it can come out, because the rest of it refers to
It's just
native.
definitions of what they
Right,
are.
and
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, that's good. Good idea.
As long as they were present at the time the Europeans arrived in North
Right.
America. That's important.
Yeah, sure.
So non-invasive planting, say that again, Elliot?
Non-invasive planting shall be used unless otherwise approved by the planning board, period.
In other words, purple loosestrife can't be planted. It's a very
Unless they-
common example.
well, Unless they were here when the Europeans came to North America.
No, they were brought in.
Oh, okay.
They were
Then they
brought
can't.
in.
Then they can't.
Or bittersweet's another one that's considered invasive.
Okay.
There's a whole litany of those things.
Anything else?
Let's see, I'm trying to see. Number 2, it says a minimum depth, topsoil spread to a minimum depth of 3 inches over an area of the site which is disturbed. Yeah, for example, 3 inches over hard bedrock will not survive, it'll die in drought periods. I know it says below, they can establish greater depth, but I'm just making a comment that 3 inches is not necessarily generally good. The planning board would be required to pick another number depending on the soil and the,
Okay, but there's no
rock
change,
stuff.
right?
No change
but I just,
over what's here.
y'all understand that.
Yep.
3?
Yeah, we always go into a definition of what's a tree. Now, we did do a definition of a tree in, I think, the solar law.
Well, we also had one in the, the clear cutting thing.
Yeah.
We could pick it up and put it.
Yeah, I just want to because everybody has their definition of a tree. I think it's at 4 foot from ground level, it's 6 inches or something like that. I'm just saying it should be consistent. Now, if you want to put a definition up under definitions here for tree,
Well, that's where we'd go, sure.
then, that would cover it.
No,
Yeah.
No, we don't have one, but, so, we could just add that there and
but
it'll
we
apply.
have created them for other cases, so we could just use what we didn't. Not for the zoning, but we did one for the
We
solar.
talked at the solar, we talked
Right.
at the tree law,
For the tree law, we had a definition.
we had a definition.
Yeah. No,
I'm
but
saying we created a definition, we
A
just need to put it
definition
into the,
It wasn't the definition that was defeated, Russell.
yeah, it's essentially feet above ground in diameter. We should be consistent, that's all I'm saying. Should-
so just before tree canopy, we'll add in tree and define it.
I know one when I see it.
Huh?
I know one when I see it.
Okay,
Oops, I put it up too high, okay.
4?
Yeah, let me go down here, put that where it belongs. Okay, 4.
I'm trying, I think you said you're on 4, there's a typo in the last line, it should be principal ending in AL,
Yes,
and that's a minor point. And I would suggest that you should say it's in that same line, building or buildings on and bordering the site.
Where are you saying we should
Same,
add that?
at the very last line of item 4,
Oh, okay.
and with the principal building or buildings on and bordering the site, so the immediate area is all consistent?
What if you get into a situation where it's not? You have to
Well,
go-
it says you have to use walls, fencing, planting, a
Right.
combination of those things.
No, I mean, what if the bordering site has buildings that are incompatible with the site that's being worked on? Which one do you choose in that
Well,
case?
then I think you just do the best you can. I mean, the facts on the ground are what they are, and I would, the goal is to make it as compatible as you can with the immediate area.
So
mean,
then I
it
would
won't
add
be
on
a
the end of the
perfect solution.
sentence, wherever possible.
Yeah, okay. You could say that.
That would take up,
Yeah, I mean, it seems to me that if you had to make a choice, you would go with what's compatible with what's on the site under discussion, rather than,
Depends how ugly that is. But
I guess we'll have to
wherever
call,
possible.
we'll have to
would
call
work.
you when the time comes, and you'll have to tell us which one is.
I'll define.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, the comment I had on that same area was, what about bricks? You're saying fencing, walls, plantings. Now, walls, are you allowing bricks? People do brick walls. In addition to the plastic white ones, in addition to the wooden ones?
I read this as being walls or walls, so,
Okay, so you don't care about bricks?
I mean, that's how I would read it.
Okay,
It's
no, I'm
open-ended.
just trying to be sure.
anything else?
Okay. we'll leave it- leave
So
it-
we're gonna
leave
say
it generic
We're gonna
walls.
do that bordering whenever possible or something? Is
Yeah,
that-
With the principal building or buildings on or bordering
Site.
the site
Site,
wherever
wherever
possible.
Wherever possible, fine, all right.
Okay.
Okay.
And 5?
Yeah, I got two of them here.
Hey, Liz, did you ever find that book? This is the book.
Okay, in 5,
you're struggling for might be some
sort of about in the dead center, just about. The sentence is
relevant to
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines down.
do you have.
And it says, planted with a mixture of evergreen and deciduous plantings at a planted height so as to completely screen the parking area. It says evergreen.
We don't have to.
Evergreens, for the most part, are called deer food. And they will go 5 feet up and strip everything off, and all you wind up is Christmas trees that start 5 feet above for screening, and it's all wide open, okay? Classic example of that is up in 9G, just north of
Conform to our zoning.
Slate Quarry Road on the west side, where they planted these nice, pretty trees, and they all have the trees on the top, and the stems are all eaten away by the deer.
Is that something that's
So,
relevant to this conversation?
So take out evergreen, just leave in with a mixture of decision and planting?
Yeah. Now, they typically don't eat,
they don't eat
Rodent.
pine, they don't eat pine trees.
oh, yeah, they will. They will.
What do we
Look
do?
right across the parking lot here,
Sorry, I
they,
lost track.
those pine
We're on
trees
number
are,
5, is that
Yeah,
right?
Oh,
number
okay.
5, sort of right in the
Why-
middle,
why
where it
don't-
says evergreen.
Could I suggest you just say a mixture of plantings at a planted height so as to completely screen? Wouldn't that work?
Yeah, I mean, you put arborvitae in,
I
they'll
think we-
eat them too, they like
oh,
that.
I think in the past, we've taken out deciduous and just said evergreen. Isn't that the way we've been generally doing it?
That's what I thought.
That's, yeah, we did that last week with
Right.
something, and we did that sometime
Right. We
prior.
took-
We did
put in
take that
evergreen
out.
and we took out deciduous.
That's what we have been doing.
I'm just saying it's deer food.
What, deciduous?
No, evergreen.
Oh, evergreen.
Now, if you put rhododendron in, it's not, but rhododendron doesn't grow high enough to hide things.
Yeah, but this
Okay.
was just discussed last time, and we were told to take out,
Sorry.
decision is.
We did take the.
Yeah, well, we did it with the
I don't know
solar
where
thing,
it
too.
is, but we did
We
take
took
it
out
out.
deciduous, and we just left it evergreen.
I'm just saying it's deer food. You can leave it in, but the result is not what you want in the end result.
Well, it is, in a sense, you're protected because it goes on so as to completely screen the
Understand.
parking area. So if the deer eat everything, you got to replant your trees.
Yeah, in the motor vehicle section, number 7, it's,
Yeah.
we took out a mixture of deciduous
Right.
and left in evergreen plantings.
Right, that's what we've been doing, right, exactly.
I'm just saying, it's very expensive to replace trees that are 6 feet or 7 feet tall, because that's the only way you're gonna hide something. Go call a landscaper and ask them. It's not just the physical tree, it's the labor of putting them in and taking them out. So I think it's, the whole thing on buffering, I don't care where it is.
So let's just take out evergreen and deciduous and just put a mixture of plantings
Yeah,
as
I
items.
have no problem with that. Or you can say white plastic fencing,
White plastic trees?
white plastic fencing,
Oh, fencing.
you know, the walls.
Could I make a suggestion in the second line of 5 that the screening is from the neighboring properties and roads?
Say that again?
In the second line of 5, where it says.
At the end of the black.
Right, yeah, right, before the underlying,
Screened
shall
from-
be screened from neighboring properties and roads. So
I'm
people
trying to remember
bicycling
what
by
this is,
won't see it
landscape.
either.
Yeah, no?
Well, I mean, if you have a parking area that's next to the road, why wouldn't you want it? There may be cases where you want to see it.
Well, in some other sections, I know we've required screening of parking areas to the road.
Right.
I can't now tell you where it is. It might be a conference
Well, I think
center.
those were in areas where we were not per
Like hamlet
se
areas.
excited about per se the business being there. So in those cases, we wanted to shield, like the event center, we wanted to shield it from the neighbor. But in, let's say, the case of the church next door, I mean, that parking lot's right in the front. It's not shaded in any way.
But this section isn't limited to the kind of districts you're describing. This could be anywhere in town, right? This section on
yeah.
landscaping?
Yeah, it's any place.
So some places, I would think we'd want to screen from the road.
But I'm just saying, if you put it in, then it would say that you would have to do it all the time.
Everybody has to do it.
All places. And
We could
we've done
exclude
it for
the
solar
industrial-
and stuff, you know.
And I think as part of the planning process, if you're going to the planning board, they could recommend it as part of getting, say, a variance where needed.
Could we say it must be screened where the failure to screen would be inconsistent with the character of the neighboring area?
No. The point that we're getting to is, this town, over the last 5 years or so, has become filled with what I call the white plastic fences to hide things for screening purposes. Using your philosophy, we're gonna have a lot more of them, so we're gonna eventually wind up to be looking like gated communities all over the place, not like farms or rural.
I'd agree with you. I'd rather look at a parking lot than white plastic fence, but this is talking about landscape with trees and plantings.
Understand, but it's still hiding stuff. The guy may plead too expensive, impossible to do, and the planning board says, okay, use a plastic or a wooden fence. I'm just saying, in most cases, they have the option to modify this a little bit to meet the needs of the person.
Well, I'd prefer to have, my view is I prefer to have parking areas screened, but those are my 2 cents.
I think the planning board usually asks for screening.
I know.
That's what I'm saying, if you're going for a variance, the planning board can ask for it.
Yeah.
Like next door, I think they ask for, there's a row of trees along the road.
I kind of have a question. How do we get to Article 5 supplementary regulations? Under what circumstances do you require property owner adhere to 250-61?
To be the planning board.
It's a planning board. So if you have a project that doesn't have to go to the planning board, then you never get to the landscaping ordinance.
Yes.
So there are many projects that don't have a requirement to go to the planning board. So I'm wondering, how would you be able to implement this ordinance for certain types of uses? And do you want to have it addressed under 250-61? Two examples I can think of.
These are not for individual homes.
These are not for single-family homes.
No.
These are for properties that are subject to environmental review,
It
your
should
site
be.
plan approval.
Yeah,
But-
purpose, paragraph A defines subdivision, multifamily,
Right.
industrial, commercial, et cetera.
But if you have an agricultural farmland and they wish to clear cut their entire property, there's no buffer zone against existing residential uses which would adversely affect perhaps the residential quality of life. You wouldn't want to have, say, a cow manure pile at the property boundary of your residential zone. And yet agricultural would be completely immune of this requirement for a buffer zone, a reasonable buffer zone at the property boundaries against existing developed property. And so as agriculture, they never get to this
No.
zoning regulation.
No.
And then we have some reference recently for a daycare that didn't have to go in front of the planning board. And in that paragraph, it actually speaks of screening, but it doesn't give you any sense, it doesn't take you to this section.
No.
So
But it's
you end up
covered-
with the white plastic fences.
But it's covered in 250-46, which is the section on daycare.
You found
so-
that out,
I'm
that
pretty-
it mentions screening.
I'm pretty sure it does, doesn't
It
it?
mentions screening.
Yeah, that's
for,
250,
for the
yeah.
play area,
Right, right.
Yeah,
that's-
there's a lot of sections
Right,
that
right,
mention
right.
screening, you know.
without a definition.
in various
without
forms.
the benefit of the well-thought-out language of this 61. And-
So are you making a suggestion that this be part of something else, or?
Well, this particular regulation is only applicable to your projects that go in front of site plan approval,
Yes.
but not to some other instances where a landscaping buffer would be appropriate. It's missing in the ordinance in a case of agriculture, and it is lacking definition as far, recently in my review of the daycare. You may have corrected it. I just wanted to also mention that the reason why you perhaps want to maintain native plantings is that these are the plants that are not going to require excessive water or care, or will likely die and require constant replacement by the property owner. It's a environmental and a conservatory decision by the board, and it would be very consistent with what your master plan is. And the mission purpose, A, the last paragraph, the last line says, this is intent to preserve the rural character of the town.
Yeah.
So I can't imagine that, if you have an argument about white plastic fences and things like that, but it's the planning board's call, then the planning board would be, I think, looking for the ability to request sensible, economical, local species, as opposed to, odd stuff that would become invasive, or that would take over, or that would require so much maintenance.
The situation on native species, if you go to DEC, which I talked to them, I got their booklets and all, most of those plants that they identified as native, I never recognized, okay? So if I don't recognize them, I don't know many other people that would recognize them either. So that means they would have to be purchased from some specialty landscaping
They're
place.
not available at Home
They're-
Depot.
No, no, no. Now, people say, oh yeah, put orchard grass or put lilac or whatever. Some of those things are acceptable, but they're not native.
Right. But that's why perhaps the language here might be more precise if you referred them to a native plant list available at the cooperative extension. Or, you know,
It's
Millbrook
DEC,
Cooperative
no, it's not cooperative, it's DEC. And it has a listing of about 20 plants that they consider both 20, I'll say grassy and small stuff, and then
Well, they have
shrubs.
shrubs, they have trees, they have
Yeah.
ground covers, they have fruits and vegetables and plantings like that. But again, there are places that define those things. Maybe you don't need to define them here. And the idea of screening from the roadway, for instance, that was brought up, you really don't want to not have a development exclude screening from the right-of-way. You want to hide your parking spaces if you're going to maintain your rural character.
You're getting to the point as to whether it looks better to see 2 cars or to see 40 feet of fencing of some kind, okay?
But that's where the planning board would make
No,
those
but I'm
decisions.
just saying, this is the decision you're forcing on saying you got to shield everything. that's why it's-
That's, you
you're-
go any place, that's what
And
they
you,
got.
and you're getting to be a gated community, as far as I'm concerned. I know there's no physical gate there, but it gives the impression that you can't get through to see the people.
Thank you.
Well, Lou, I mean, before you go, I mean, you made a whole bunch of comments, but is there a specific thing that you think we should add or change, or?
I think that you should retain language that promotes screening from the right-of-way in the commercial application, that the screening should include native plant species as defined by DEC or the cooperative extension, so that you're working with a list that is available and broadcast. It's not a secret. And it would help the planning board. Otherwise, you'll end up with people saying, yes, I'm going to put lilacs all around my parking lot, and you'll notice that that's like an invasive species. Or maybe there's too much lilac in that area, and you want to have forsythia. So you want to encourage, you don't want to tie the hands of the planning board by telling them what plants to plant. You just want to point them in the direction where they're going to get maybe the best possible outcome. Because the applicant is going to read this and then go to the source for information, the correct source for information. And just to emphasize, that everything that you do here is limited only to those commercial projects that go to the planning board when you are dealing with agricultural entities. They are able to build agricultural buildings that look, smell, and taste like commercial properties, but aren't required to go through the planning board process. So as a result, they never are asked to comply with 250-61. That's what I mean, is the agricultural use doesn't get to ever implement this section of the code.
Nor would I would think that ag markets would allow it.
Oh, it does. The language of the ordinance requires that it comply, agricultural entities comply with our zoning code.
As long as it's not overly burdensome.
Overbearing
Well, who would decide that?
Ag markets.
ag and markets.
Right, but our zoning code requires that there are setbacks. That's not onerous.
No.
So if screening or landscaping of the barn building that is being used as a store to sell product, screening of the parking lot, the quality of the lighting in the yard, the surface of the parking area. I mean,
my understanding is that ag
Never
markets would basically allow us to enforce any safety controls or zoning issues in reference to safety. But when it comes to screening,
Well,
how is that a safety issue?
If the farmer is trying to maintain an agricultural or rural quality out of the goodness of his heart, but if he chooses not to pave his parking lot, or not to put gravel down, or not to do any safety features in the parking lot, it's kind of counterintuitive. You have a lot
I mean,
of,
we have some tree farms, and so they're seasonal, you know, they come and cut their Christmas trees or whatever.
yeah.
And so people will park on the grass,
Yeah, you can do
because
that.
it's.
That's
it's-
fine.
And they would call that potentially a seasonal parking lot.
But you see, I'm only talking about making sure that, say, a parking area is screened from the roadway, so that you don't have a change to the rural character of your facility, of your right-of-ways, of your roadways. You drive down the road, you don't want to see parking lots in the town of Clinton. So you should be trying to get a landscaping referral somehow for farms, and that was, you asked me what was.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm just, and I'm playing a little devil's advocate maybe, because I'm trying to feel it all out, but,
It's only because I know that the agricultural law that we have makes reference to our zoning ordinance. But it's a case of where it's very clearly that there's nothing that refers an agricultural entity. If they go a certain threshold of development, they could be spending $1 million building their building. But no one is asking them to comply with our.
I would almost think that what's going to end up happening in those particular cases is that they're going to become some type of a destination or event center. And for that reason, it would be captured in that law, because nobody's going to spend $1 million on a building, on a farm, in this area, unless they're doing something else in that building, I would think.
I know of other circumstances, so it's the idea of trying to get your best. You're making a very good law, but it is locked away from the property owners that might be creating the biggest change in the town of Clinton over the next 15 years, 10 years. So all I'm asking or
So
suggesting
then-
is get landscaping,
You know,
some kind of threshold, establish some kind of threshold so that this landscaping ordinance can be achieved. Your reasonable landscaping ordinance is nothing to be afraid of. It's not onerous, you know. And Ag and Markets,
so I'm asking for really, where would you make the change to address or grab? So like in B, it talks about applicability, where it talks about,
there's actually.
requires
language in the-
landscaping
When you
for-
go to the definition of the planning board and site plan approval, it precludes agricultural right there. Just says, no, you're agricultural, we don't want to talk to you. So maybe that's a good place to look for a referral point, you know, and maybe tied to cost of proposed construction or something like that. You know, once you reach a certain level or a certain threshold of
okay,
construction.
well, that's a different section than this,
Yes, it
right,
is.
right now.
But that's how I'm saying, is that there's no way to get to this unless you go through that.
But then you would need to make the change in B probably to say that it would also include agricultural.
Yeah. But the people that, you know, the attorneys and the developers, they go first to see what the regulations are for site
Right, but we're not
plan
doing that
approval.
tonight. I'm
And
just-
and they're excluded.
Mhm.
So when I first came here on this, I just was saying that, how do we get to this ordinance from other parts of the code where they're not sent here? And agricultural is to me one of the biggest ones. You know, there may be other instances, but they're minor. Agriculture, you know, is something that there, perhaps, you know, there are examples in the community where a great deal of money is being spent, and if an agricultural property is, you know, wants to enhance their property, they're going to follow this rule, whether or not they are required to go in front of the planning board. but
I mean, I think that if you modified B, again, where it says for special use permits in hamlets and industrial districts, you could expand upon that where it wouldn't just be limited to those two areas. It would say that really any special use permit would now be subject to possibly the landscaping. I mean, if that's what you're getting at, I'm just saying,
yeah, I don't know exactly where you'd want to put it. I'm just suggesting that you find a place to do it, if you were willing to. Again,
well, I'm looking for input.
well, I'll get back to you on it.
Okay. So is there something that we want to change prior to, or do we want to finish up on 5? Because we were at 5, so
So
we're
B
talking
is-
about this mixture of,
B is staying,
Decisions, plants, and-
B is staying the same? Section B is no
well,
change.
there's been no suggested change, so I,
Don't know what to change, yeah.
We taking
In general,
this out?
the planning board usually requires some kind of a landscaping plan for special use permits.
and that's,
In general, not just
right.
Yeah.
in
And that's
hamlets, but
kind of
general.
why I said if there was something to be changed, it would be right there in B.
So that, yeah, I mean, even if we were to require that, it doesn't really change essentially what's already being done. Even though this is limited to hamlet and industrial districts, the planning board typically requires them townwide for special use permits, and also for site plans, for that matter. So I don't know why these would be limited to multifamily or parking lots. So one possibility would be to simply say special use permits and site plans, period.
Yeah. There's one,
Since that's effectively what's being done anyway.
yeah. There's just one other concept that's not mentioned at all under 5, okay? So you put a fence around, a hiding fence around all the parking area. Now, where the driveway enters the major road that you're trying to egress onto,
They can't,
you gotta have visibility on that road, so it says that the fencing has gotta be back
Right.
enough with a triangle and all of that kind of stuff so you can see, and, I think mention of that might be best included here, so that exit of the parking area, the, what do we call it,
well, you don't want to restrict the site visibility of
Yeah, no.
entering.
But, no, I wanted to say that the plantings shall not interfere with the site distance of exiting the parking lot area. It's just, I know it's sort of dumb, you think you should take that into account, but if it's not there, it may not be considered.
Well, sure, absolutely. I mean, that goes without saying, I think, but
I know,
you can
but,
put it in.
yeah, I just think that comment should be in there.
Okay, where and how?
Right at the end.
Subject to the approval of the highway superintendent or something,
Yeah.
somewhere in there.
Yeah, because, he got to approve it with one conditions, and all of a sudden now they're putting trees and stuff to hide it.
So, right now it says, subject to the approval of the planning board, and I can put, and, highway superintendent to, ensure
Visibility.
proper
Site distance.
site
Yeah,
distance.
something, yeah.
Yeah.
Are we going to going back to letter B, we're going to leave that the way it is for the time being until we hear
Yeah.
from Lewis? Is that the idea?
Yeah.
Okay.
right, 6?
I don't know if 15% is a good number or not. I have no feel for that.
I have no idea, have no idea where Neil got that from.
Who knows where Neil got a lot of his things from?
So, I mean,
Maybe from another town.
Poughkeepsie? I don't know, I just have no feel for that number. Shall comprise not less than 15% of the land area of the proposed parking facility.
Well, for parking lots of more than 20 spaces.
Right.
So it's only for larger ones, not for smaller ones.
Understand,
Yeah.
but still. The bigger you go, the 15% gets to be a bigger portion of the real estate of the parcel.
Yeah, it's kind of a lot of extra words. that
Yeah,
I don't think needs to be there.
Well, I would imagine the idea is so, because you want to have the parking lot broken up with landscaping and things
No,
of that
that's
sort,
inside.
to make it more visually appealing rather than having row after row.
Right, but that would be part of the site plan.
Well, yeah, for sure, right.
But to say 15%,
Yeah,
it's kind of arbitrary.
Well, of course, it's absolutely arbitrary, but to delete it means there's nothing, then it's zero. And zero is not,
But again, the planning board could make that decision as to what is adequate for this circumstance.
all these rules provide guidance
yeah.
for the planning board.
Well, this makes it restrictive guidance, so now it's saying it has to be 15%.
This is 45 square feet for every car.
that's pretty big.
But what's 45 square feet for every car? 15%?
10 by 4.5 feet,
Yeah.
9 by 5.
It's a parking space roughly.
Oh, you mean a parking space?
In other words, for every parking space,
It's 45
this
square
is going to
feet.
be like a 5 foot by 9 foot.
Okay.
Yeah, essentially another parking space being added.
So in a rural character that we wish to enhance,
Right.
I don't think that that's a lot,
I-
but it's up to you. But you're not talking about a lot of surface area. 15% like this is probably what you have in most small commercial parking spaces, parking lots for a Hyde Park.
I don't want a lot of big parking lots in town. When we have to have them, I think a minimum amount of landscaping is very appropriate. And I agree, I think it's a small, 15% to me is a small number. It would not be overly burdensome when you're building a new parking lot. So I would urge, but is there a magic to 15%? No, but it's a small number.
And it could just be grass.
Well, yeah, like the lot next door at the church.
Landscape guidance.
So that means you gotta put trees on it?
Not if you have 15, well, yeah, when you have 15%. you have-
Let Russ come, then you gotta come up here. People don't hear you, Lou.
When you're talking about this, I hate to appear ignorant, but I can't quite figure out what the hell you're talking about. For parking areas containing 20 or more, such landscaping shall comprise not less than 15% of the land of the proposed parking facility. You're gonna have to explain that to
Well,
me,
one-
because I can't quite follow the train of thought here of these
Actually,
words.
I have the same question, because we're talking about parking lots that are not where the spot, like next door, where there are no spaces.
No lines.
It's just open, and people park there. So how do you apply these numbers in a situation like that? where
Well,
there
a
are no
building like
parking
that,
places?
and Lou can attest to whatever, but you would have to provide so many parking spaces for the size of the building.
When you get to a
You
20.
gotta talk to the mic.
You gotta talk to the mic.
That's all right.
Oh, yeah.
Russ, move
He'll
on.
move aside.
Knock him down.
This is free
Just-
form.
What I understand is written down is that if you have a parking lot of 20 cars or more, then you're going to break the pavement up with landscaping islands
Right.
of not less than 15% of your
Right.
paved surface.
Right.
So if it was 30 cars, it would be 15% of the 9,000 square feet of paved surface.
What if
The
it's unpaved
designer
surface?
puts this any place they want to put it, because, but this is in the middle of the parking areas.
Oh.
These are islands
Right.
within the asphalt, not the perimeter of the
But
parking
what
lot.
if the surface is unpaved? Does that make a difference?
No, no. There's no reason why you couldn't have a landscaped island in the middle of a gravel parking lot.
Of course not. And actually, you can put more cars in an unpaved area than you can in a paved area.
Well, don't give anybody any ideas.
Never
We're
mind.
talking health, safety,
mind.
and welfare.
Yeah.
Okay.
But, okay, it doesn't say that 15% is applicable to the land area inside the parking area. I was reading it as the periphery, around this parking.
I don't quite understand why the hell you even need, I mean, if you got a parking lot that's 100 by 50, why do you need to have little islands in it breaking it up? Just have the parking lot and let it go at that. I see no reason. I can see if you want to have buffers or whatever around it, but I see no reason why
A designer needs to control the runoff of rain from the parking lot so it doesn't flood off the property, or it doesn't scarify, or you just have a concept of a rural character. You're going to lose trees to build a parking lot. You're going to want to make the developer put trees and landscaping in the middle of this.
you may want it. I think it's ridiculous.
I'm not excited about it. I think it, first of all, the 15% should say inside the area, and to force that, I think, is the requirement for the planning board in their site plan review, if they feel it's appropriate or not, because just trying to put that in doesn't make sense.
I can tell you from the standpoint of a developer, the more information you give them of what will achieve an approval in your town, and not leave it to the risk of how the planning board feels that particular night.
There needs to be a number of some
It
kind.
needs to be defined carefully.
I agree with Louis. I mean, it doesn't have to be 15, but there should be something in there.
And the wording, you gotta say that this 15%, whatever that number is, pertains to the landscaped area within the parking lot.
That's correct. That's correct.
Well,
Not
it al-
outside of the parking.
It already says that, but you can emphasize that.
Well, I don't,
If you go back to the beginning and read the sentence from the beginning, that's what it says, but it's a little awkward. I agree. It says the interior areas of proposed parking shall be appropriately landscaped, and for parking lots containing 20 or more spots, shall comprise not less than X%. But
Say such interior landscape.
you can do that, fine. Yeah, to make it more clear,
Yes.
sure.
Yes.
Well, Louis, I mean, is 15% sort of a working number, or have you ever come across that before in your travels?
Yes.
15%?
But in
Yeah.
some communities.
Yeah.
But again, this is a community where you haven't really, I mean, you can see the fruits of not having it.
Oh, it's just mile
just
after-
acres of
yeah,
blacktop.
which you don't want, right. I
And
don't
that's
think we
really
want-
not what
right,
you,
no,
yeah. You want a rural character.
Right.
The more plantings you put in that thing, you're going to have cooling of the asphalt, you're going to be doing, a microclimate amendment, you're going to have a lot of positives with a greater tree canopy over the blacktop or over the gravel.
It's also a place for lighting, isn't it?
no, the trees get in the way of the lighting.
The lights don't come up out of the,
No, well, they come up, but if you have trees all around, trees then shade where the lights go.
What you want is that the landscaping is not illuminated, from
Well,
above.
yeah.
You just need to have somewhere in your ordinance, I'm sure, there is a specification about foot candles
Yeah.
on a paved surface.
So you think 15% is a reasonable number?
I'd double it,
What?
because I like trees and grass.
Oh, yeah. Well,
And you have big pieces of land where where these development projects are planning to be, and if relief is needed, they can ask for relief at the zoning board with practical need.
You can always ask for a variance. So you think it should be 30%?
I think that's too much.
I don't want to impose
Okay.
anything,
All right.
please.
I'm barely happy with 15. Going to 30 is no.
15 is okay.
So was there a change to 6 somewhere? I heard
Yeah.
Iden,
The
Ian
suggestion
had said
was
something.
such interior, yeah.
In the next to last line?
No,
Such interior landscaping shall comprise, to make it clear that it refers to the
Yeah.
interior landscaping.
such.
You see that, Dean? See where it says 20 or more?
Yep.
Parking spaces, such interior landscaping
Okay, I'm sorry.
shall
Okay.
comprise. Is that right? That's what, yeah.
Yeah.
I just have a question about, do they have to be trees? All right, use the church parking lot as an example. It's dirt and
Right.
gravel.
Right.
We do have an island that goes, separate the middle,
Mm-hmm.
no trees, shrubs. Okay? But, so why would you limit it to trees as opposed to trees, shrubs, plantings of some sort?
That's right.
All pleasing to
Interfere
the
with
eye.
Lighting. Trees interfere with
The
lighting.
advantage of trees is shade has been mentioned, and also they grow larger, and so it's more buffer, more pleasing to the eye. I mean, shrubs are better than nothing, for sure. I personally prefer trees as it's written here because they grow, they're better for the environment, and more shade and more oxygen is created for everybody.
But they also interfere with the lighting of the parking lot, which is supposed to be lit nowadays for all kinds of reasons.
Just a question. There's, in the book I'm looking at, it looks like, did you cross off? Did you retain C1 or did you eliminate C1?
Well, if we change native to non-invasive, then the rest of it goes out.
But you didn't drop the paragraph.
No, we didn't drop the paragraph.
No,
Right.
it just
Well,
kept the first line.
just kept
That's
the
where
first
your definition of landscaping is.
No, this just tells you what kind of plants to use.
Right. And in other words, a landscaped island could be just grasses if the applicant wished to present that to the planning board. It could just be, one shrub. So I've seen in other towns, they will have a minimum number of shade trees or trees that achieve a certain height or have caliper dimensions, defining the size of the tree so that it's sizable enough that it might survive the first or second year of installation. And if we don't have that, we might need to find information like that.
Okay.
When the planning board looked at the site plan for the church next door, Nancy was talking about before, you guys did a very elaborate landscaping plan about trees going around the outside and the
Parking lot.
We have a big, nice buffer.
And,
Yeah.
specific kinds of trees and where they were going to be located. It was very elaborate, a very elaborate landscaping plan, which is typically what the planning board would ask for, something of that magnitude, because that was a major project. So they're going to ask for a substantial plan. And that's what you guys did. You followed the plan that you came up with.
It's really funny because except for the definition of trees versus shrubs, we kind of have that over there. Was it an accident or?
I don't remember any discussion about trees and
Yeah.
interior.
And the lighting is proper
Yes,
down
right.
and it's below road level.
It might be because of an enlightened applicant who wants to have a quality, those qualities. but you will have developers or applicants who will put inappropriately sized trees that won't become shade trees. They're, you know, they're no taller than I am. You see that in Rhinebeck at the Stop and Shop store. You know, the trees are very tiny in the middle of these islands. Why do you even bother then?
Well, they'll grow big.
They won't grow big.
Oh, they won't?
No, they're 20 years old, 30 years old now.
Yeah,
They're
trees-
as big as they're going to get.
Oh, okay.
But it's only because it wasn't specified properly by the landscaper, or they were substituted perhaps, and the planning board didn't catch it. But you want, if you can, to define what size trees or the number of size trees within an asphalt parking lot, so that you're not getting only, you know, a grass lawn on an island. The planning board would not be able to reject it. You're not giving the planning board the strength in your ordinance for them to demand a rural quality character parking lot.
Well, but if it says containing trees and tree groupings, and the landscape plan only provides for grass, then you can reject it.
Right. If the idea is that you have a definition of landscaping at C1 of what constitutes landscaping. So when you say, well, we want landscaped islands.
Right in 6. In 6, it requires trees.
Trees.
Yeah.
Okay. So then do we,
definition of tree will tell you the size, if you go back to the definition that you're gonna make.
well, again, I don't know if that exists in your ordinance, but the language is appropriate to say caliper size or gallons. Helps you determine what exactly the age of that little baby tree is.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's, and the older the tree is, the more likely it'll survive the first few years of planting. So that larger trees are generally required for commercial applications,
Yeah.
something that will survive.
The definition of tree that we were talking about was 4 feet from ground level, diameter of 6 inches. Now, that is for generally keeping trees in the general landscape of a house and stuff like that. You're not gonna put 6-inch trees into parking lots.
Oh, you might not get 6-inch trees. I think you said 4-inch caliper, though. 4-inch
Well-
diameter?
Well, I
At
forget
4
the
foot
number what
high?
it was. 4 feet high, yeah, it's either 4 or 6 inches. A 4-inch tree is very expensive and
You
hard to put in.
can't get.
I know you can
6-inch.
get them.
No, you can't get them.
Oh, okay.
Got one from Adams, and they had it planted in New York.
How much money?
It's $200 to have the guys bury it, but I mean.
Again, it's the idea that there are reasonable sizes that are
Yeah.
available
I'm
at
just saying-
nurseries for these trees.
Yeah.
Maybe, like Ray is saying, at 4 foot high, 6-inch caliper might be,
To keep for general original tree in your landscape area, while, say, a 3-inch tree or 2-inch, I'm just picking a number, would be for plantings, new plantings. So we may have to split the tree definition into the 2 categories of purpose.
you would want to at least carefully consider the size of the trees so that they relate
And they'll
properly
grow.
to what's available in the industry.
And they'll grow.
And they'll survive. You may also want to require, to the greatest extent possible, incorporating existing trees.
Yeah.
So that these trees are not wholesale mowed down and then only to be replanted with, you know, Russian olives,
Yeah.
you know. I don't know. If you don't have it, we'll help you write it.
So in 6, we're adding such interior landscaping. Anything else in 6?
No.
No.
7?
No.
Nothing in 7? 8?
I'm just concerned about the grade. Sometimes the grade will have to be severely altered if you want to keep it very low when you're parking on a hillside. So you wind up digging a pile of ground out to make it level, and now you wind up in the back is a ground surface. Okay, you can put grass or something on it, but I know what's intended here, but I'm just saying it can be overdone and made very difficult. It says grades of walks, etc., shall provide an inviting appearance. Well, that's all subjective. But if you go too far, it's a major undertaking to move a lot of ground. Doesn't come cheap. And the space may not allow it. For example, with the rocky surface we have under the soil, I mean, you can come up with these humongous blue stones that you can't split. You can blast them out, but you can't blast really anymore because too many houses are close. It affects the water table or the power lines or the Iroquois gas line. So I'm just concerned about the grades. Now, maybe that's over concern, but, you know, to easily accommodate pedestrian movement, you know, as we're all getting older and using wheelchairs,
Speak for
it's going
yourself.
to be pretty flat. A lot of other younger people than me are using wheelchairs. So, you know, I don't know how to solve it, but I just want to call issue to it.
I'm going to just bring up one other question. I have no idea if there's any provisions anywhere else in zoning, because I'm not the zoning person, but when I look at putting walks in and spaces for cars and so on, where in the zoning law do we have anything that starts to address handicap?
There's a
Provisions.
separate laws for handicap.
Because I'm finding that sidewalks are not always handicap
No,
accessible.
that's right.
Grading would not be handicap. Is that an important issue, or is that
Oh, yeah,
just?
but that's included in separate laws.
That would be regulated by New York State adopted building code.
Right.
We've adopted that building
Right.
code. Our ordinance will speak to access of buildings from the parking lot with the paved surfaces. So
Okay.
you might be seeing an old parking area or an area that is adapted to a very difficult site where they are doing the best that they can.
Yeah.
Where they're subject to the ADA as opposed to the New York State Building Code.
Yeah,
Right, okay.
yeah, they're outside regulations that cover that kind of
Yeah.
stuff.
I only ask the question because I find more and more, I have a couple of elderly friends that I take to doctors and building, and more I'm finding sidewalks, buildings, accessibility in and out.
Oh, yeah.
They're not addressing handicap at all. And I'm bringing it up as something, do we address or not?
The building code will only come up if you're creating a new parking lot. If you're restriping, you're obliged to come up with accessible spaces and unloading and loading zones. But most of the existing businesses that you see out there, if there's no new construction, they're simply compliant with the ADA, a civil
Okay.
rights law.
Fine. Okay, thank you.
Number 9?
Okay.
We kind of talked about that already, haven't we?
Anyone? Number 9?
No, I'm okay.
10?
10, okay. But 10 is just interpretation.
11?
Yeah. This is where we get into vegetation native to the area and others will be harmonious, et cetera, Again, some people think sumac and red cedar are there, and you don't want them, so this is the whole non-evasive. plants. And sumac and red cedar are really considered evasive. But, you know, there's others like that. So I think in here, where we got vegetation native to the area, sumac and red cedar are native to the area, as far as most people are concerned, but they're, oh yeah, or sumac, poison sumac. I mean, I haven't seen it here, but I know it exists. So, you know, I just was trying to get the word native vegetation, native to the area out.
So you're going to say non-invasive vegetation?
Right.
That will be harmonious
Yeah,
to the design and
yeah,
shall be used?
yeah, yeah. It's that repeating of the non-invasive.
So,
There is one thing I think it's covered under ADA. When you transfer, when you're going from a parking lot to a sidewalk, you got to put this orange rubber mat with the dimples in it. And now, I happen to know that, I know he knows that. It's not commonly understood why you got to do that. I don't know if we want to mention that or not, but the planning board should require that when they do their site plan analysis on that particular situation.
If you could, I mean, if you added something into the ordinance and that would require that they consider all types of handicaps, then if you're blind and you're using a walking stick, you will feel those little rubber bumps.
Oh, yeah.
And you'll know that you're entering a traffic area. But there are other ways of, it's not just purchasing a rubber mat. A creative designer would be
That's the
able
more
to do that.
typical one you see.
Yeah, and then, the idea is you could encourage, just by adding something that says encourages a creative solution using indigenous material.
Yeah,
Would be like brick, pavers, not something that is so, like the rubber bumps that you see in the urban areas.
yeah, the rubber bumps things are terrible on shopping carts,
Well,
on wheelchairs, I mean, or people with walkers, because,
That doesn't really fit under number 12.
no, I just wanted
Oh, in
to
general,
make
okay.
mention of it, so that we don't miss it,
You'd have
because,
to add that as a separate thing, a separate number.
or in the beginning of the whole thing,
Or in the beginning.
make a statement
You
that
could do that.
everything is ADA and whatever else
Sure, we could do
compliant.
that, yeah.
Yeah, wherever you make reference
Yeah,
to that, or even
yeah.
in the landscape, it would
Yeah.
be a case where perhaps in order to maintain your rural quality, that your paving surfaces reflect a variety of natural materials as opposed to plastics and rubbers.
Yeah,
That way they can buy whatever they want to, but it would be cement or be a textured tile, not a rubber thing.
I was just saying that, to worry about putting it in wherever it could conceivably pop up, it's under the very beginning of the zoning.
If you
saying-
have a place.
Just like you say, the building code is there, ADA compliance, and I don't know how many different versions of stuff, and so that everybody's alerted there. The planning board's got to read that front to recognize that it's there, but we don't put it, or try to put it in every section, because I don't know all the sections that we want to put it in.
There's probably a good place for it, and I'll look for it for you.
Yeah, but I
After this
think in
meeting.
in the beginning, under general ideas or
I'd
whatever.
be surprised if it isn't already there.
It might be. I'm just calling attention to that situation.
Okay.
So is there any change to 12, Ray?
No.
No.
How about 13? Original language, just the maintenance of the,
It's not been
Maintenance
changed
bond.
anyway, right?
The only thing that you may want to state is be provided to the town clerk. She's the official repository of bonds. Yeah,
What's that?
So what are you saying, the bond should,
maybe set by the town board and given to the town clerk for filing.
okay.
and
Filed.
not-
filed with the town
And
clerk?
filed with the town clerk, yeah. Because she keeps the record, so, 20 years from now, or 3 months from now, or whenever you're cleaning it up, we have a place to go and get it, just like they do for roads and developments, the same kind of thing,
Prior to final approval of the plat,
yeah.
so that it's done, you don't,
After, once it's done.
if you have, is that your procedure now? So that you collect the bond after you've given them the site plan approval?
No, once it's reviewed and finalized.
We
What
get
if
the
they
bond
deci-
at the time that they sign it,
The language, the document.
yeah.
I'll just withdraw my question.
Okay.
Dean,
Yeah.
could you go back and, number 5, C5, where'd we end up with that? Because parking areas and parking lots shall be
Yes.
landscaped with trees and plantings and shall be screened from neighboring properties and bordering thing or something. What was the deal we did?
Right away.
Okay, what did we do with 5? We did some changes on 5. Yeah, but there was a change also at the beginning, wasn't there?
Oh, yeah,
Well, there was a question as to adding roads.
after the
After
word
property.
properties.
Neighboring properties and roads, is that what?
Roads, that's it.
Right away.
All right, there's a difference.
We refer to, the public area is the right-of-way. So that means if you're driving down Hollow Road and somebody's built something, like a parking lot, you would be expecting to see screening, landscape screening, buffer between your view on the right-of-way into that lot.
Right.
So then it should be public right away.
Yes,
Well, but,
public space.
except we've been saying roads throughout. Does that mean all those places where we said roads?
Sorry, we have a defined term of road, which is any kind of road,
Yeah.
public, state, county, local. We have a defined term right of way, which is different. It's a legal right of use or passage over another person's property.
Yeah, that's not the same
That's
thing.
different.
That's
That's
very
totally,
different.
right of way is different from road.
That's an easement, basically.
Right, it's an easement,
Yeah.
it says easement, it says including an easement, it's basically an
So, I
easement.
mean, I think if we're going to be consistent, we should
Use
say
roads,
road,
yeah.
because that's what we've been saying.
It should be,
Road would be the right term.
Okay,
right.
so that's the only change up in that sentence, number 5? And then we took out,
In the middle there about the
Right.
evergreens and
and
decisions.
then we added the thing at the end about the highway.
Highway
site
superintendent
distance.
to,
Okay, right,
Site
right,
distancing.
got it, okay,
Yeah.
all right.
How we doing?
I think we're just about done.
How are we doing? Yeah.
851 I have.
Yeah, I don't think we could get into the other topic, which is 61.1. So we'll save that for next time. In addition to that, going in order of the book here, there's nothing in 62, 63.
66 was the next one that you mentioned before.
Right, so it would be 66. Nothing in 67.
Except Rusk is going to read 67.
70 would be, we'll do sign regulations would be number 70.
70 is changed, so then 70 would be the next one
Right.
as well.
Satellite dish,
No,
68.
sign what?
Wasn't really too much changed in there, but
All
Well,
right, 68.
there's a
I
lot
have-
of information in there, so I'm sure we'll,
I have
Find something.
comments on it, and
All right,
really, basically, the comments is, When this was written, we were talking the 5-foot dish antennas,
Well, we were talking giants.
More than 5.
or 6 or whatever, okay?
Now
Now we're talking 18 inches or
Right,
so.
right.
So,
Well, now they have these little things on the side of the house.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
25 years ago, these were.
Satellite dishes.
I was in office when
Yeah,
we went through
yeah,
all
humongous
this.
things, right. No, I understand.
So I
60 set, or 70.
yeah,
You still
so
see them around, but not very often.
I don't
There's a
know of
couple.
any in the town anymore.
I thought there used to be one.
There may be one left in the way back, but I'm just saying.
Well, whatever.
So, you know, the difficulty here is the way this is written, it doesn't allow the current small satellite dishes to be located the way they are on houses and stuff like that.
What needs to be done to allow them?
Well, first of all, it says, "A ground-mounted and satellite dish antenna shall
Yeah.
not exceed
Yeah.
a diameter of 16 feet or
Right.
grade height of
Yeah.
20 feet." A guy can put it on the top of a 2-story side wall of his house, and that's above 20 feet,
Why would you?
because
this-
that's where the satellite
Right,
company
but this
put
says
it.
ground mount. The ones that you're
Yeah.
talking about are not ground
Round,
mount.
yeah.
They're house.
That's all right, we'll deal with that section when we get to it.
Yeah, I'm
so
just
that's
saying-
not a problem.
It's 68,
So,
68, I think.
yeah. Yeah, it's next time. We were gonna skip it, and I said, I think we should clean it up to take into reality of what we got today.
so anything in between, obviously, if it's in the book, we can talk about it. It
How do
hasn't
you-
been changed, but,
How do you want to handle the comments that I read on 56? You want to hold off on those until we're
Yeah,
ready to
I thought
revisit
we were
them?
gonna do them all at one
Is that
time,
what you want to do?
because
okay.
we got
Fine.
a lot of
Later.
later stuff. yeah.
Fine, okay, so we'll just keep them.
We're gonna have to go through the whole thing
Yeah,
again.
okay, fine.
Clean it up.
Fine, all right.
all right, it's 8:56. Make a motion to end the,
Adjourn,
adjourn the meeting.
second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion carried. We'll be here in 2 weeks on Thursday, 7 o'clock, continuing with the zoning revision.